Are we on? We're live. Good. Rotarians and guests, welcome to the Rotary Club of York. I am your club president, Aaron Jacobs, and we are York's premier service above self organization. But you know, I had another thought this week when I heard the theme song from the 80s TV show Cheers. Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go and they're always glad you came. If we did things right this year, my hope is that everyone gets that cheers feeling from our Rotary Club, a place where everybody knows your name and we're always glad that you came. And that sure sounds like part of the four-way test to me because it's about goodwill and better friendships. And so let us together recite the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Now, I doubt if anyone here actually knows everybody's name. After all, we are a large club. But I can certainly say that we are all glad that you came today. I'm also especially glad that these three outstanding true Rotarians came today to get our program started. We'll have Brittany Reese lead us in the America Beautiful song, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Then the invocation from Steve Feldman and guest introductions by Todd Fogdahl. Brittany.
If you'll join me, please. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties of fruiting rain. God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a word of prayer. O God, creator and sustainer of us all, we are grateful for this chance to gather once more as a Rotary Club. Rotary has come to mean something important to each of us, whether it is an opportunity to widen our business and community circles, to engage in civic discourse, to learn something new each week from informed and engaging speakers, or to take advantage to serve our community in various ways. We are grateful too for our speaker today, for his willingness to enter the fray of elective government, and we ask your strength, guidance, and wisdom be upon him as he seeks public office. And on our behalf, you might suggest to him that the Rotary four-way test could be a useful thing in politics. We ask your blessing on our meal and on the people who prepared and served it to us. Bless all those who need to know that they too matter to you, and always remind us that your blessing is most appropriately delivered in our words and our actions. Amen.
Good afternoon. I have the honor of introducing our guests for today's meeting. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing until President Aaron has welcomed you. We have a visiting Rotarian with us. That is Kathleen Stoop from the Carlisle Club, and she is the District Foundation Chair and a guest of Jane Conover. We have guest Mark Skehan, guest of the club. We have several guests of Tom Donnelly, including Linda Skehan, Ed Brenner, Larry Hicks, Cindy Donnelly, and Todd Hess. Ryan Pawczek is a guest of Brittany Reese. Eric Anderson and Christian Corrado are guests of our speaker. Mike Grandbois is a guest of Steve Harlacher. Dean Nachtigal is a guest of Bob Borden. Rick Poole is also a guest of Bob Borden. We have Stan Saylor with us, a guest of past President Ann Druck. Guests of Sean Skehan include Katie Skehan, Joe Skehan, Julie Brenner, and guest of past President Rob Bowen, Julie Parr-3. Karen Wilbert is with us as a guest of the club. Nate Sizemore as a guest of our speaker, and Alice Sloan is a guest of Dick Sloan.
Visitors coming to Rotary and taking a break from all your worries sure does help a lot, doesn't it? Well, we hope you all do get that cheers feeling from us today during your visit, because you know what? We'd like you to be a member someday. And we were just saying we don't have enough ski-ins in this club. That could all change now, preferably before June 30, if you don't mind. So Rotarians, let's become like a cheers sort of club where we try to know everybody's name. And you can start by not only introducing yourself to our guests, but also to a Rotarian that you just don't really know that well. But nonetheless, enjoy a great meal, endearing fellowship, and a fantastic program. Rotarian, let us welcome our guests. Have a few announcements to go over. So last Friday, that was a big evening and a big deal for both our club and our community as we cut the ribbon at the Continental Square during the Give Local York event. If you haven't been downtown yet, please take a moment to visit all the squares. There's more than one sign. We have prominently displayed the four-way test in all of that guy. That's not a handsome imposter, I swear. We did have a really good turnout from both our members and the community, and we wanted to thank everybody who made the donations also to Give Local York, which was another success for us that evening. So make sure you go downtown and take a look. Speaking of big deals, next week, we will be revealing our club's new strategic plan. As all of you know, we have been hard at work keeping our club strategically significant and impactful, and we have a great plan to share with you. So you don't want to miss next week when President-elect Courtney Piccolo and past President Glenn Miller take the podium to show the exciting direction and future for our club. On the more pragmatic announcements, the Rotary Club Board of Directors will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. via Zoom. The IDEA Committee meets on May 13th, also via Zoom. The Program Committee will meet on May 15th at 1:20 after our meeting here at the club. Mike Summers, past President Mike Summers, is looking for suggestions for awesome programs and speakers for the upcoming year. And I know you know a lot of great speakers. So please send your suggestions to Mike today so we can consider this for our upcoming year. There will also be a networking event on Tuesday, May 21st. Thank you, the York Water Company. This will be at the newly completed Lake Williams Dam. I believe this is a lunch and a tour to see the new facilities. So please see Rob Bowen, past President Rob, where are you? There he is. See him if you want to come. I'm sure it'll be a great time. On to the President's Challenge. So I've been doing the President's Challenge throughout the year, and now we're getting to the end of the year, which means we're getting down to the last few committees. And my goal with this program is to stimulate the club in new ways to serve, to get more members to step up and help, and to just help improve the impact and visibility in our community. One committee that I think has done a great job is our Communications Committee. From our new commercial to the yard signs and just overall promotion of the club, I feel the Communications Committee has gone above and beyond this year with the President's Challenge, and I'd like to invite Sarah White to the podium to talk more about this committee and how you can help. Sarah.
Okay, impromptu. So I have no slides. I think I got a little confused on the dates, but our committee is Our committee is very active. We meet once a month. We are changing the time for next year to 4:30 to accommodate schedules. It's the last Tuesday of the month, every month. And it's a very hands-on committee. We manage all of the social media for the club. We collect data and analytics around that so that we can look at how how many visitors are coming to our website each month, that sort of thing. We also promote the club in various ways. I mean, the year before last, we helped, really Chris Top gets the credit for that, but we did some videos that the station, Fox 43, kindly produced for us. And then we were able this year to turn those videos that actually aired on television as commercials originally. We were able to repurpose them and create ads that we showed on Facebook for a special membership campaign. We're still kind of working on that a little bit, but that has yielded at least 100 people who showed some level of interest in becoming a member. And at least 3 of them are in the final stages of actually joining. And that was just in March. So it's pretty exciting. We would love to have more people join us, especially if you have some skills with social media. That would be really helpful. So let me know if you have an interest. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah. And now I'd like to invite Jane Conover to the podium to give us an update on global grants and the Sandafa project. Jane.
Thank you, President Aaron. 60 to 80% of communicable diseases in Africa can be attributed to poor sanitation and inadequate hygiene services. A child born in Ethiopia is 7 times more likely to die before the age of 5 than a child born in the United States. Often that's from poor sanitation. That is why the Sandafa Sanitation Project is so very important. And I'm here today to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for all the work that and the support that you've given to this. Building safe latrines and teaching hygiene will help children in Sandafa and in Africa live longer and healthier, and it will improve the health outcomes in Sandafa for generations to come. We have exciting news to share with you today. Your gifts and contributions to this and contributions made for matching funds from Tom McCracken and Living Word Church totaled over $24,000. That helped us leverage $23,100 from our Rotary district for the project. And I'm so pleased today that Kathleen Staup is here. She is the Global Grants Committee Chair and the incoming Foundation Chair for our district. She really helped me through this project, and she also is a great proponent for the project with the committee. Thank you, Kathleen. And I'm thrilled to report that after many, many months of starts and stops, the Rotary Foundation has approved our grant application and will put $18,480 into the project. So that means that our gifts were almost doubled by our partnership with the Rotary Foundation. And keep in mind, all those Rotary Foundation dollars are the result of the giving that you've done for the foundation over all these years. So again, thank you very much, because we couldn't do this work without you. So when working with partners in developing countries, I really had to build up my level of patience. So here's where we're at. So now that all the funding is secured, there's one more thing that has to happen, and that's Dr. Freyu, who you met last year. He's our partner in Sandafa. It has to get an agreement with the local government to do the project. But he's such a great ambassador that he's been bringing along the mayor and the administration of Sandafa all along. So we are very confident that he'll get that agreement this week. So we expect to start building the first 8 latrines this summer before the rainy season starts. And then we'll do the next 8 latrines in the fall. Those will be in a neighborhood. So we haven't been idle all this time while we've been waiting for these details to be finalized. With funding from, again, support from you all, we have a global grants budget every year in our club. And so for last year, we decided to invest in 2 projects in Sandafa because we're really interested in building deep relationships with both the members of the community in Sandafa, but also with the Rotary Club of Central Mela. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those. The first project was organized by Dr. Frey. Could you go back a slide? Dr. Freyu and his team, his medical team. There really is a hunger crisis in Sandafa. So our gift that year, this year, helped 80 households feed them with food boxes for a whole month. So 80 households got food for a month thanks to us. The second project was organized by the Rotary Club of Central Mela, and they are helping residents in Sandafa learn how to grow food. And they have hired a local potter. You can go to the next slide now. A local potters to build potted plants, and they are putting herbs in those plants, medicinal herbs, for members of the community. Our partnership with Sandafa has really been built on with the relationships that Andy Siebold and Living Word Church have developed over the years. They've been sending medical mission trips to Sandafa every year. And Andy and his team is going again in July. And so I'd like us all together to make a quick video giving our greetings from our club to the club in Central Mela, and let them know that we're here and we're happy to support them. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to count to 3. And if you could change the slide, we're going to say the words that are on this slide. So everyone ready? I'll count to 3 and we'll say those words. All right. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you all.
I can't say enough of how pleased I am with such a great international project during my year. It's a blessing, and congratulations to Jane and her committee for doing such a fine job. Keep up the good work. And now that we're on a roll with service, it'd be a great time to invite Tom Donnelly to the podium to give out a Service Above Self award. Tom.
Thanks, President Aaron. Well, baseball is back, and I am pumped. My Phillies and Orioles crushing it. Our Revs in first place. Our college, high school, baseball and softball teams. Our York Little League underway. And next up, opening day this weekend, the Susquehanna Semi-Pro Men's League, and next weekend, right, Mark? Our Central York League. Small town baseball at its finest across York County. It is a great pleasure for me to present the Charles S. Wolf Service Above Self Award to Mr. Baseball, Mark David Skian, for his enormous contributions to advance amateur athletics in York County. First, could I have a show of hands for those of you who knew Charlie Wolf? That's great. About half the club, maybe. It seems like only yesterday, but he passed away in 1998. Truly a family, business, community, and Rotary builder, president of our club, and district governor. Our member, Fran Polk, is his niece. I want to thank Michael Haiti and his committee for doing this important work. I also want to thank our guests, Ed Brenner and Larry Hicks, for their help with Mark's nomination and the outstanding service that they also, in their own right, have provided for decades to the Central York Business League. And now on to the Central League Commissioner, the commish, Mark Skian. Major League Baseball's commissioners, from Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis in 1921 to Rob Manfred today, have had to resolve every major baseball controversy, betting scandals, integration, free agency, steroids, strikes. And yet Mark Skian has served the Central League for longer than any of those commissioners. 28 years since 1996. We also recognize Mark as a longtime champion or coach or board member or all of the above for many causes and school teams. I only have time to mention a few: our York City ice rink, many York Catholic teams, the York City Parks Conservancy, and bringing back minor league baseball, the York Revolution. Mark now finds the time to serve as the assistant coach for York Catholic's varsity baseball team. Mark's peers say it all. According to Ed Brenner, a league leader for decades in the Central League, Mark is an outstanding commissioner who is fair, flexible, but firm, logical, and decisive in his decision-making. And Larry Hicks, retired sports writer at the York Dispatch, also a member of the League Hall of Fame, adds, Mark is visible at games throughout the season and fully engaged all year. Even as a player, Mark had to work extra hard. Mark, I think that's a compliment. Mark was catcher for the Jefferson team. I, Larry, was the catcher for Stoverstown. Because Jefferson's Field didn't have any outfield fences, small town America, right? When Mark hit a long ball, he had to leg out every extra base hit and home run that he made. And finally, Eric Menzer. Beyond Mark's official volunteer roles, he has been a champion for family recreation and sports in York City and County for many years, a quiet and persistent supporter and volunteer for families and kids without seeking recognition. So let's recognize him now, winner of the Charles S. Wolf Service Above Self Award, Mark Skian.
Thank you very much.
Mark has asked that Rotary's $150 honorarium go to York Catholic.
Thank you, Tom. It is our profound honor to congratulate Mark Skian on receiving the Service Above Self Award. Your selfless dedication and tireless efforts in our community embody the very spirit of Rotary. You inspire us all to live up to the ideals of service and integrity. Congratulations and keep up the good work. And now I'd like to invite past President Mike Summers to the podium to introduce our program. Mike.
Good afternoon. I would like to just mention that the program committee will be meeting next week. I need suggestions if you have any to me. Come by Monday, well, no, Friday, because on Monday morning, we're going to be reviewing them before the meeting. And we've gotten quite a few this last week because Lynn put out a wonderful email. So I appreciate all those efforts, but we are always looking for the very best, and I look forward to hearing from you. On to today. Our speaker is Dave McCormick, who is running for the United States Senate in Pennsylvania. A seventh-generation Pennsylvania star wrestler, West Point graduate, combat veteran, and Pennsylvania job creator, Dave hopes to bring his skills as a leader and innovations to Washington. Since launching his campaign 7 months ago, Dave has been meeting with Pennsylvanians in all 67 counties to better inform himself on how he can be a transformational leader in DC. He wants to present the interests of all Pennsylvanians, regardless of their party, and Dave is presenting to the Rotary Club of York to share how he will serve the people of Pennsylvania in the U.S. Senate and answer any questions that Rotarians may have. Dave was born in Washington, Pennsylvania, and raised in Bloomsburg, the son of two lifelong teachers and prominent educators, and the oldest of two boys. Dave was raised to understand the value of hard work. Growing up, Dave played football, he wrestled, he trimmed Christmas trees, he delivered newspapers and bussed tables at the McGee Hotel. Dave was nominated to the United States Military Academy by a Pennsylvania senator and became the first kid from Bloomsburg to attend West Point in decades. After graduating, Dave went on to serve the 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper. He was deployed to the Middle East during the first Gulf War and received the Bronze Star for his service in Iraq before retiring as a captain. And after the Army, Dave earned his PhD in international relations from Princeton University before moving to Pittsburgh to start a career in business. He worked his way up to become the CEO of Free Markets, a successful tech startup that employed hundreds of Western Pennsylvanians. In 2005, Dave was called to serve again, this time in the highest levels of government, including the United States Treasury and as Deputy National Security Advisor. For 4 years, Dave spearheaded the fight to protect American technology from Chinese theft, advised presidents on key national security issues, and helped negotiate the global response to the 2008 financial crisis. Following the administration, Dave joined Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest, most successful investment firms in the world. He served as CEO until he resigned to run for the Senate in Pennsylvania in 2022. Dave and Dinah are proud to support organizations that work with veterans and their families. Dave is running for the U.S. Senate again this cycle. Dave is committed to using his unique leadership expertise over the last 4 decades to deliver results for a Keystone state. He isn't afraid to stand up to both parties to do what is right, and he'll do whatever it takes to fix our broken economy and restore the American dream for all Pennsylvanians and future generations. Fellow Rotarians and guests, please warmly welcome Senate candidate Dave McCormick.
Thank you. And thanks, Mike, for that great introduction. And thank you, Nicholas, for organizing all of this. And thank you, President Jacobs, for putting everything together here. We really appreciate it. And it's great to be with a group of Rotarians and business leaders. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to respond to the 4-way test and how that relates to today's politics. That may be a bigger task than I'm ready for. But what I would like to do today is talk to you not as a Republican, not as a candidate, but just as an American, a fellow American, and try to give you my sense of the state of things and why I think this moment is so important and why I think leadership is so important. You know, I lost the last primary. I ran in 2022. I lost the primary by 900 votes out of 1.5 million votes cast. And, you know, I learned the lesson over and over again. You learn more from failure in life than you do from success. When you have success, you attribute to lots of things. When you have failure, you scrutinize everything. And failure was painful, but good for me in the sense that it forced me to really do a gut check and say, do I want to run for office again? You know, that's not easy. And we're almost empty nesters. We got 6 daughters, 23 to 17. We talked to our daughters about this political thing, running for office again. They're not exactly for it. By that, I mean, they're 100% against it. And so I was kind of thinking I might move on. You know, I had my moment. I missed it. Didn't quite work. And every time I got to the point where I was about to accept another job or go back to a different chapter of life outside of elected politics, I kept coming back to this moment. We're in a moment. We're in a moment. We're in a moment that if you believe in America, if you believe America is an exceptional country, the greatest in the history of the world, with all its dark chapters, all the things that are wrong about America, America's still been a force, unique force for good in the world. If you believe in America, if you believe that America is in trouble, which I do, and I'll describe why in a minute, and you believe you can do something about it, you believe you could actually make a difference, then you got to do it. You're called to service. And that's why I'm running for office, because I think America's in trouble. I think we're in decline. And And let me describe why I think that's the case. First, running for office is one of the great privileges I've ever had in my life because you get to talk to people across Pennsylvania, across the country, and you see the same themes repeating themselves over and over again. And it may not be the case so much in this room today, but for most Americans, the economy is not working. It hasn't been working for a while. So 60% of Pennsylvanians live paycheck to paycheck, 60%. And over the last 3 or 4 years, prices have gone up on average by something like 21%. Wages have gone up by 14%. So most Pennsylvanians are getting squeezed. Food, fuel, rent, more expensive, less money in your pocket. The interest rates have gone up. So if you buy a new pickup truck or a new car, it's 60% more expensive in terms of your monthly payment. If you try to buy a new house, it's about twice what it used to be because of mortgage rates. And so as a consequence, if you're one of the 60%, now if you have a house, if you have a 401k, things look better because assets have gone up. You're an asset holder, you got a lot richer. But if you're just living month to month, quarter to quarter, things got a lot tougher. And of course, $35 trillion of debt. So just mark it down today, a McCormick rule. If your interest payments are bigger than your defense budget, you got a problem. That's what's happening today. We're paying $1 trillion of interest on $35 trillion of debt. Our defense budget's about $900 billion. So we're in trouble. And listen, Democrats and Republicans alike, if you look at the charts, 20 years of spending, out of control spending, out of control fiscal spending, although it's gotten a lot worse in the last 3 years, it's like a hockey stick, $6 trillion of incremental spending. And that's been a big driver of inflation. The spending's a big driver of inflation, that and really the push on reducing fossil fuel consumption, because that's pushed up fuel prices, which go back into. So for most Americans, the economy's not working. Most Americans, most Pennsylvanians. Second problem is border. Putting aside political rhetoric for a second, 10 million illegal migrants came across our border over the last 3 years. Now think about that in national security terms. 160 of them were on the terrorist watch list. Those are the ones that were apprehended. God only knows how many people came across our border. And these aren't people from Mexico or Central America. These are people from around the world, Middle East, Central Asia, and so forth. And that poses a real risk. It only took 13 people to take down our towers. So I worry about the fact that there are so many people in our country that may have motivations to hurt our country and that we've lost control of it. But the thing that's most relevant to Pennsylvanians is the fentanyl crisis. The fentanyl crisis is out of control. I've talked to Dave Sunday here in York County. York County has done a great job, but Commonwealth-wide, we lost 4,000 Pennsylvanians last year to fentanyl. 4,000. We lost almost 100,000 Americans last year from fentanyl. Just to put that in perspective, right? We lost 50,000 people killed in action in Vietnam over 8 years. We lost a little more than 5,000 killed in action in 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is an epic crisis. And the fentanyl's ingredients come from China. They go to Mexico. They're manufactured in Mexico. The cartels have many tens of billions of dollar business. The fentanyl comes across the border at illegal entry points and legal entry points. A couple of days, it's in Pennsylvania. And it comes up from Baltimore here in York County. It comes down through Route 80 and 81 near my hometown where I grew up in Bloomsburg. And it's pervasive across our Commonwealth, and it's getting a lot worse. So we need dramatic action to not only secure the border, but to go after the cartels and to deal with the plight that we have here. It's a huge economic burden. It destroys towns, destroys society. Crime across Pennsylvania. The statistics are indisputable. Pre-COVID, violent crime and a variety of different crimes is up more than 20%. In my hometown of Pittsburgh, you see that the city has been hollowed out. In Philadelphia, it's different than the city that I love and have been to every year for 30 years, going to the Army-Navy game. And there's a result of lots of things. It's a result of the drug crisis. It's a result of district attorneys that have been much more permissive with the way they've dealt with violent crime. In Philadelphia, there's a prosecutor named Larry Krasner elected who essentially put in policy a policy that releases people if they steal less than $1,000. Right? This is the same thing they did in San Francisco, and I think many of you have probably read about what's happened to downtown San Francisco. So we got a real crime problem. I was in Chester County recently and talked to a young woman who was a proprietor for a sporting goods store. And I said, how are things? She said, business is great. I said, what's, tell me about it. She said, gun sales are off the charts. And she said 60% of gun sales are from suburban women because they're worried that violent crime is coming into the collar counties outside of Philadelphia. So we've got these issues that are really affecting Pennsylvanians and affecting Americans. But the thing that's probably most alarming to me right now is the spiritual decline. And you see this on our college campuses. I just went and visited Penn last Wednesday, went to this encampment, but you see these kids. By the way, I've got 5 kids in college. I could talk about that for days. You see these kids marching. They don't know the difference between right and wrong, between good and evil, not being able to differentiate those things. And you say, my God, how could that happen on these college campuses? How could we see that? And then you see those 3 college presidents testify before Congress. I don't know if you saw that a couple months ago. And they couldn't actually call out the difference between right and wrong and good and evil. They really didn't exhibit leadership or moral courage. And I said, that's how it happened. Our leadership on these university campuses aren't creating an environment where kids get exposed to a real back and forth on ideas, and instead are being pushed in a direction where they're adopting an ideology and a lack of understanding of America. And it's truly anti-American. You also look in those college campuses, about 30% of the kids are very patriotic. And this shows up in our recruiting numbers for our military. So across all these dimensions, I worry deeply, deeply about the future of our country. But then you look abroad and say, oh my goodness, in our adult lives, was there ever a moment? I mean, think about what's happening today. You have what's happening in the Middle East. My wife and I visited Israel right after Christmas. We walked through one of these communities, Kfar Aza, where 800 residents on October 7th, 100 of them were killed, butchered. These are decapitations, families burned, parents killed in front of their kids. It's just a level of barbarism you can't imagine. You say, and then we met with survivors, we met with hostage parents, and I came back with a clear sense, at least for me, that really combating Hamas against Israel, we needed to support Israel. But this isn't about just Hamas and Israel. This is about an Islamic radicalism that's directed at the West. And the original sin is Iran, and Iran is underwriting this around, and that's coming our direction. Those radical jihadists are attacking U.S. troops in Syria and our ships in the Red Sea. This is a real problem, but it's not just that. It's Putin's invasion of Ukraine and instability in Europe. It's China rattling its saber about the possibility of Taiwan. So listen, I'm 58 years old. I was a soldier during the Cold War when we used to talk about nuclear annihilation. That was the thing. That was the scenario. The world blows itself up. I was in the first wave of troops into Iraq, and I was the undersecretary of the Treasury during the financial crisis, where we literally thought we were going into the next Great Depression. And with those experiences, I've never been more worried, never, about the possibilities of things outside of our borders hijacking our country and taking things out of our control. And so we're in a moment. We are in a moment where leadership matters more than maybe in any time in our adult lifetimes. And so that's the moment we're in. Now, here's the crazy thing. I'm an optimist. You must have to be an optimist to run for office, but I am truly optimistic about America's future. And the first reason I'm optimistic is my experience with America. Like, listen, I grew up in that small town. I did all those jobs. I had great parents, but I wasn't given anything. And West Point opened my eyes to America in a way, duty, honor, country, and all that America has to offer. And I had the privilege of serving in our military and having a successful business career, serving in the highest levels of government. I feel lucky. My wife is an immigrant. She was born in Egypt as a Coptic Christian. She came to America at the age of 5 so they could practice their religious freedom. And her dad couldn't get a job. So he mowed lawns and he was a mechanic, and she worked her way through college at the University of Texas. And she went on to serve 2 presidents in the White House and have this incredible business career. So we look at each other and we feel like we are blessed, probably like most of you feel, by the American dream, everything America has to offer. So very, very special. And we're worried that that's not going to be there for our kids, probably like many of you are. And the second reason I'm optimistic beyond that experience is this is the American tradition. This is the American tradition. We get to the edge of the cliff and we pull ourselves back. It's happened over and over again. It's happened throughout American history. We're on the verge of collapse and we pull ourselves back. It happened in my lifetime. I can remember it. 1979 felt a lot like today. I was 14 or 15. I used to wait in line with my dad at the gas station. We had, gosh, what was the name of that car? It was that big station wagon with the wood on the side. And we did odd days and even days. Odd days and even days. You couldn't get gas. You have to get gas on your right day. Remember that? And we had stagflation. Our inflation was like 16, 17%. It made these numbers look small. And we were also in recession at the same time. And we had OPEC, who had control of all the energy in the world, more or less. We had a war going on, a Cold War with the USSR that we thought at that time we were losing in 1979. And we had our hostages taken by Iran, and they were hostages for something like 430 days or something like that. Everybody remember that? 80% of Americans, 80% thought the country was headed in the wrong direction, just like today. 80% of Americans, for all the reasons I told you in the beginning, feel like America's heading in the wrong direction. 80%. That's why, by the way, I think this will be a change election this year. I'm hopeful it will be, but that's why, 80%. And that was 1979. 1983, I'm a cadet at West Point. I'm a plebe. And I'm walking down those walkways. You're looking out on the Hudson Valley. It's incredible. It's America's university. You feel like you're in the, one of the most gorgeous places in the world. And it was morning in America, 1983. Because we had pro-growth economic policies, deregulation, the economy was on fire, inflation was in check. Volcker, with Reagan's support, had broken the back of inflation. We had a military buildup, which ended the Cold War 6 years later without firing a shot. And you could feel it in the air. People believed in America. People believed America was back. 4 years. 4 years. I'm not saying Ronald Reagan exactly is the answer for this moment. It's different challenges. Some of those same challenges, but different challenges. But what I am saying is leadership matters. Leadership makes all the difference. And this is a moment where we as Americans need to be asking ourselves, do we have the right leadership, and what do we need to make sure America, the exceptional America, remains that way for our kids? And, people through all our lifetimes have said the most important election of your lifetime, this is the one. This is the one, in my opinion, at least for me. This is the most important election of our lifetime. And whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or independent, I hope what you'll be thinking of, and I hope what we can get everybody across Pennsylvania to think about, is what kind of leadership do we need for this moment? In a change election, what kind of leadership do we need in this moment? And for me, a lifetime of seeing great leaders, trying to be a great leader, I think we need leadership with vision. Leadership that believes in the core of American values. What makes America special? Free enterprise, individual freedom, merit. These basic principles are uncompromisable. You start to compromise these principles, you don't have America. And so as all we think about all the challenges we face, we got to be true to the core of what made America, America. The second thing we need is courage. Courage in public life, courage in private life. But people will stand up and say, this is what I believe. This is why I believe it. This is what I'm willing to fight for. It's not a party thing. It's not, you don't have to be lockstep with Republicans or Democrats. You just have to fight for what you believe. And if that doesn't work politically, then let the chips fall where they may. But people that have the courage to stand up in a time of crisis and say, here's where we need to go. I think we need leaders who have humility. I've been given many blessings, but the blessing of failure has given me that humility. I was a CEO of one of the major financial companies in the world, and I got fired. I got fired on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And a few years later, I became CEO again. And that experience, even though I disagreed with being fired at the time, was one of the greatest experiences of my life, because it made me scrutinize. What could I do different? How did this happen? What could I have been better about? And it made me so much more humble about the need to get advice from others, the need for input, and the need to have empathy for people as they face the challenges they face. So we need leaders with humility. None of us has all the answers. And the final thing we need, probably more important than all the others, is a sense of selflessness. This is not, for a leadership, it's not about you. In public life and private life, the one thing I've learned is the leaders that are most true, the leaders that are most effective, the leaders that change the world are the ones that aren't doing it for themselves. They're doing it for the benefit of others. And that's what I think we need most in public life. And so that's why I'm running. That's what I think this election's about. And I was at State College, I don't know, probably 2 months ago, and I met with the college Republicans at State College. It's like 50 kids in a room, maybe the only Republicans at State College. And I said to them, I was giving them a sort of a talk, and I stopped in the middle of it just because the idea came into my head. And I said, listen, you know, the truth of it is, I'm going to be okay no matter whatever happens on this election. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. And the reason I'm going to be fine is that I got more years behind me than in front of me. And that's the way it is for most of you in this room. You got more years behind you than in front of you. But for those kids and for our kids and maybe our grandkids, it's not going to be fine. We are not on a path for things being fine unless we do what America always does, which is course correct. Get the right people in place. But it depends on what we do. And that's why this election is so important, whether you're Republican, Democrat, independent, getting out to vote, voting for the kind of leadership you think will take America in the right direction is could not be more important. I'm honored to do it, honored to be part of it, and honored to be with you today. Thank you very much. And I think I'm on for questions, but I didn't go too long, right? Was that, how long was that? Is that 50? It was 15 minutes, I think, right? 20. Okay. I got a little wordy, but I'm happy to take questions. Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. What are two of the three issues that you really want to address when you get elected?
Well, I think the first two I mentioned, I mean, inflation / the economy and border. So I think the border, let me start with the border. I mean, I really think it's a crisis. And I think putting in place the right executive orders is a long way to go. I think the president has it in his authority to stop a lot of that flow. But this fentanyl thing's insidious. And, you know, I've talked to Dave Sunday about it. I'm going to say something that's a little bit radical, but I think on that, we need to go so far as to interdict the ingredients coming from China. I think we need to go after the cartels, potentially across the border. We've got very sophisticated drone technology. We can take out those cartels. I think we should. And then we need to do a lot of work here at home to reduce demand. But I think that fentanyl thing, it's almost like the scale of the numbers is so big that people's eyes gloss over, but it is truly, truly devastating to our communities. So border would be number one for me. I think as I said, the president has a lot of authorities. Of course, there could be legislation that would help it, but let's not let the talk about legislation stand in the way of doing the things that we can and should do right away. And on the economy, listen, I think that's a big issue. And you see what's happening with inflation and the economy slowing down. I think it's a tough place to get through. I think in the end, we've got to get control of spending. You know, we're on an unsustainable path. I don't think it's imminent, but we cannot sustain this path. And so we need to curb spending. And how do we do that? I think we really do need a balanced budget amendment. I think there's a lot of things we could do to put an incremental burden on members of Congress to really exercise fiscal discipline. And you know, there's lots of things we're going to have to reduce, starting with discretionary spending, but lots of the other spending we're doing, and that's tough, but that's necessary. You know, I'm going to say two things that are a little bit contradictory. The first thing is we're in crisis on fiscal, and we need to fix it. I believe that to my core. The second thing I'd say is we're still the greatest economy in the world, and our ability to self-correct is really unique. So if you had $1,000, you could invest any country in the world. I'd argue to you, you probably want to put 80 or 90% of it in America, because the American economy is so resilient. Its ability to self-correct. But we got to get leaders in there who understand that free enterprise, not government intervention, not government spending, is the path to prosperity. And you know, so we can fix this, but we could also screw it up. And right now, I humbly think we're on the path to screwing it up.
So I'm originally from the United Kingdom, and I thought that healthcare over there was crap. And then I moved here. And not necessarily crap, it's good healthcare, but the prices are, to me, through the roof for a lot of the plans that are out there. What do you think the solution is to getting healthcare costs down in this country?
Yeah, it's a enormous, I think 18% of GDP. You know, I think Obamacare made an attempt at this. I think with some pretty dramatic counter consequences to what had been hoped. And, you know, ultimately, I'm going to say something which you may roll your eyes on, but I think the more that we can introduce competition into all these different dimensions of our healthcare system, the more we can introduce innovation, break the monopoly of the government intervention, the more that we're going to get more competitive pricing and better outcomes. I really think it's that clear. And we also need to do that in a way that is giving the basic safety net to Americans. We live in the most prosperous society in the country. So we need to protect pre-existing conditions and all those other things. I'm not saying that, but we need to do it in a way that's much more driven by private sector competition. My general thesis, you won't be surprised to hear me say this, my general thesis is the more government gets involved, the more screwed up it gets in terms of increasing the cost and creating disincentives. Let me just give you an example. I'm going to riff for a second if you'll allow me, but in the pursuit of, you got to be careful what you do. So a good example of this is energy policy, where Pennsylvania, I mean, we are blessed, the 4th largest natural gas reserves in the world. It's incredible. I was talking to Toby Rice the other day, who's CEO of EQT, the biggest natural gas company in the country, lives in Pittsburgh. And he gave me the number, which I then subsequently checked. We have underneath our feet right now the equivalent of Saudi Arabia. The equivalent of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia pumps about 10 million barrels a day. We have the equivalent of Saudi Arabia in terms of natural gas capacity. And if we could unlock that, that would be a huge source of wealth creation for Pennsylvanians, great paying jobs. These jobs for 19, 20-year-olds are 60, 65,000 a year to start, and another 20 grand with overtime. So you're 85, 90 grand a year as a 19, 20-year-old recently hired tech. And it enhances our security around the world because we export our natural gas to our European allies. They're not dependent on Russia. And it helps climate change because you export this beautiful, clean natural gas and it replaces coal-fired plants in China and India. So if you want to enhance our security, enhance our economy, and enhance our environment globally, natural gas from Pennsylvania is the ticket. And with all this focus on subsidies, on moving away from fossil fuels and embracing electric vehicles and solar, which, by the way, I'm for all sources of energy. I'm just not for the government tipping the scales with billions or trillions of dollars of subsidies. What happens is we've now become more and more dependent on EVs and solar panels, which are manufactured in China, right? 80% of lithium batteries in the world come from China. 70% of solar panels come from China. So whenever the government squeezes on the balloon in one direction, it creates a lot of potentially bad outcomes in the other direction. So that doesn't mean the government shouldn't be involved in everything. I don't mean it doesn't have a really important role, but I think we got to be really, really careful. And so healthcare is the same. I know more about energy than healthcare, but I think the principles apply. Yes, sir, over here.
Thank you. Mr. McCormick, what I heard you say repeatedly is that we're in a moment. We're in a moment. Ocean temperatures set a new record every single day. Coral reefs all across the world are bleaching out and not replenishing themselves. Are we in a moment as far as the environment is concerned? And I've not heard you say anything to address that in a moment.
Yeah, well, I just tried to address it, but absolutely, I think we are in a moment. I think climate change is real. I think human activity is a big contributor to it. And I think that the path that we're on, I personally believe, you asked the question, so I'll just try to be very specific about it, is the wrong approach. So I think that when you curtail the development of natural gas, you're naively essentially making us more dependent on much carbon intensive sources of fuel that get imported in the United States. Natural gas is the clear path of transition for reducing carbon globally over the next 3 or 4 decades. We've reduced carbon emissions in the United States by 17%. We're far outpacing the rest of the world. The problem in terms of global carbon emissions is China and India. And so if you want to do anything that's going to make a difference, you got to, in my opinion, replace those coal-fired plants in India and China, which we're still initiating new ones, with natural gas. So this is one of those things where, yes, I believe the environment's highly critical. I just think it's naive to say that we're going to do that at the expense of also robust economic growth and national security. What we've done essentially is we've made ourselves more dependent on Putin. because he's got the natural gas reserves and we haven't been able to displace them. We made ourselves more dependent on coal-fired plants from India and China, and we've hurt ourselves economically at home. I defy and I will not accept that I'm not an environmentalist or that Republicans can't be environmentalists. At least I'm a conservationist. I believe in climate change. I got 6 daughters. Trust me, I've gone through this many times. But you don't have. I think it's wrong to say that's the only thing you should be optimizing, and I think that's unfortunately what's happened. Yes, yes, ma'am. Okay, great.
Okay. You can hear me. Okay, so I have 3 questions from people online. Julie M says that she works for a tax services firm and is really concerned about the banning of non-compete agreements. She says that it's going to make her job and retaining talent a lot harder to do. How do you feel about this?
I think that's the first time I've ever gotten that question. I'm not going to give a well thought through Senate candidate answer. I'll talk about it as a CEO. I thought it was important to have non-competes as a CEO, at least in our business. It was incredibly intellectual property intensive. And if you were able to recruit great talent and through the course of the employment, embed in that great talent intellectual property that was a byproduct of the company's innovation, and then that person could trade that knowledge in their brain onto the market because of the knowledge they gained from employment in the company, that seemed like an unfair trade and very detrimental to competitive advantage in the company. So there's probably another side to that story, which I'd be happy to hear. But my first reaction as a former business person and as a CEO is I think non-competes within reason are probably necessary, particularly in intellectual property intensive businesses.
From Smith S, we have, "Hi Dave, thank you for your service. And we are in a fiscal crisis. How do we deal with entitlements like Social Security and Medicare?"
Yeah, well, that's the, if you look mathematically, that's a huge driver of the expenses. But just to note how polarizing that issue is, my father, who lives in Enola outside of Harrisburg, who's 86, said to me, "Listen, you touch Social Security, you're gonna be a good senator. You touch Social Security, I'm not voting for you." So, this is a tough issue. I basically say the following, just from a principles perspective: the only way to deal with any sorts of entitlements are with principles. And the principles, in my mind, would start with any deal we've made with people. You have to keep your deals. You can't change the deal in the middle. So if people are, at a certain point in their life and they have expectations based on what they've invested or paid into it or what's been told to them, you got to live up to your. Second thing is, whatever you do, it's got to be bipartisan. It's got to be bipartisan. I would be open to talking about what bipartisan means, but it's got to be bipartisan. You can't tackle this issue. It's too polarizing. You can't tackle it one party or another party. You got to really. And the third way to do it, I think, is you got to do it in an all or nothing sort of way. You can't eat this elephant one bite at a time. You got to sort of step back. And there's been commissions. Let me give you an example. The Base Closure Commission. It's got some of the same dynamics. It's very difficult politically. Everybody knows you got to deal with it. And the way they did that was a bipartisan commission that did a bunch of recommendations to try to eliminate I can never say that word, politicization of it. And then they came back for an up or down vote to the Congress. So I think that's the only way to take this on. And frankly, there's a lot of things you could do before you deal with that. There's a lot of out of control spending that needs to be dealt with before we have to deal with that. But eventually that's something we're going to have to talk about. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll end with maybe a little bit of levity, which is, the people say, "What's the difference between running that last time and this time?" And I said, well, one thing is you kind of know how you want to run. And I know I want to run a retail campaign. So I'm going all across our Commonwealth. I've visited, 50 counties and 150 events or so in the last few months. And I said to my team, I want a bus, and the political people are giving, last time they were on my ear. And this time they said, no bus. The bus is a bad idea. That that's the way that campaigns aren't run that way anymore. And my wife said, no bus, honey, that doesn't make any sense. No bus. So I bought a bus. The bus is out in the parking lot. And so I said to my wife, listen, just think about this as a 67 county second honeymoon. This is going to be great. And she's not a true believer, but I took the maiden voyage on the bus. This is 6 or 8 weeks ago. And we did, 15 counties and 1,500 miles in like 5 days. And we were exhausted. We're coming back to Pittsburgh, and it's like one of those big, it's a huge bus. I mean, you can see it out there. It's huge. And I walk up to the front of the bus and I sit down on the steps next to the driver, and, so like glass and steps. So you're right on the highway. And I'm sort of interviewing him to see if he'd be the permanent driver. And he said, I said, tell me about yourself. He said, I'm from Butler, outside of Pittsburgh, and I've been driving bus for famous people for 20 years. I said, tell me who you've driven for. He said, well, I drove for James Taylor, greatest guy in the world, wonderful, number of years with James Taylor. He said, I drove for Madonna. I said, how was Madonna? He said, I drove for Madonna. And then he said, but my absolute favorite, my favorite above all favorites was Lady Gaga. He said, I drove for Lady Gaga for years. I love Lady Gaga. I said, Lady Gaga, why? He said, well, these stars, what they do is they finish their big show and then they fly to the next site to do the next show. But Lady Gaga likes to ride on the bus. So after the show, she'll get on the bus. I'll drive through the night. And, but she likes to see the sun come up. It's kind of her thing. So she'll get up early in the morning and she'll come up to the front of the bus. She'll get a cup of coffee. She comes up to the front of the bus in her underwear and she'll sit on the steps next to me and we'll talk. And I really got to know her. I really like Lady Gaga. And then he said something to me. He said, but I'd rather drive for you than Lady Gaga. I said, you'd rather drive for me than Lady Gaga? And he said, Lady Gaga cannot lower my taxes. And I said, okay, well, whenever you're looking for inspiration to run for the Senate, just think of that. Lady Gaga can't lower your taxes. It's great to be with you all. Thanks for having me.
Dave, any presentation that ends with Lady Gaga in her underwear. But you also talked about courage, and that's the thought that came to my mind too, because first of all, it takes a lot of courage just to become a public servant. It takes even more courage to try it twice, but it even takes a lot of courage to speak what's in your heart from a place of truth. And as president of a nonpartisan club, I would express my respect for anyone with the courage and willingness to serve the public. And thank you, Dave, for presenting your position on the country's issues, and we wish you the best of luck with your campaign. In honor of his presentation, Dave has signed the book May Among the Stars by Rhoda Ahmed. It will be donated to the Logos Academy along with the bookmark made by the students at Creative York. What a great program that was, and wait till you hear what we have next week. We are excited to host a special program where our inbound youth exchange student, Kai, will share her enriching and transformative experiences from the past year. Join us as she recounts her unique stories, cultural insights, and personal growth gained through her adventures. We will also have the opportunity to meet our outbound students as well. It'll also be another opportunity for us to learn about our upcoming strategic plan from President-elect Courtney. So you won't want to miss this double feature next week. That said, our meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.